take the road to somewhere. Energy comes from purpose. If the left side of your brain tells the right side of your brain that there is a sufficient crisis, the right side sends you energy, sometimes superhuman energy. That's why there is such a difference between people who set and achieve goals all day and people who just do whatever comes up or whatever they feel like doing. To one person, there is always added purpose. To the other, there is a boredom and confusion, the two greatest robbers of energy. Knowing what you are up to and why you are up to it gives you the energy to self-motivate. Not knowing your purpose drains you of all motivation. We have all heard that stories of the diminutive mother who, seeing that her small child was trapped, lifted a tremendously heavy object, such as a car, so the child could be freed. When asked to repeat the superhuman feat later, of course, the woman couldn't do it. Being a single father has put me in touch with the dramatic connection between purpose and energy. If I'm cooking something, for example, and out of the corner of my eye, I can see flames emerging from the kitchen. It is amazing how fast I can move from the living room into the kitchen. Crisis creates instant purpose, which creates instant energy. The he and heavy, his my brother idea is best on purpose. When our purpose is great, so is our strength and energy. But I don't know what my purpose is. A lot of people tell me as if someone forget to tell them what it is. Those people may wait forever to be told how to live and what to live for. There can only be two reasons why you don't know your purpose. One, you don't talk to yourself. And two, you don't know where purpose comes from. You think purpose comes from outside yourself instead of from within. Purposeful people know how to go deep into their own spirit and talk to themselves about why they exist and what they want to do with the gift of life. Only human beings have come to a point where they no longer know why they exist, said the Lakota shaman lame deer. They don't use their brains and they have forgotten the secret knowledge of their bodies, their senses, or their dreams. Lame deer is not optimistic about what the future holds for people who live without purpose. They don't use the knowledge the Spirit has put into every one of them, he says. They are not even aware of this, and so they stumble along blindly on the road to nowhere. A paved highway that they themselves bulldoze and make smooth so that they can get faster to the big empty hole that they will find at the end, waiting to swallow them up. It's a quick, comfortable super highway, but I know where it leads. I have seen it. I have been there in my vision, and it makes me shudder to think about it. Purpose can be built, strengthened, and made more inspiring every day. We are totally responsible for our own sense of purpose. We can go inside our own spirit and create it or not. The energy of our lives is wholly dependent on how much purpose we are willing to create. Go on a news fast. I first heard the phrase news fast from Dr. Andrew Will, who writes about natural medicine and spontaneous healing. Will recommends going on news fast because he believes this has a healing effect on the human system. To him, it's a genuine health issue. My own recommendation for news fast has to do with the psychology of self-motivation. I first heard the phrase news fast from Dr. Andrew Weil, who writes about natural medicine and spontaneous healing. Well recommends going on news fast because he believes this has a healing effect on the human system. To him, it's a genuine health issue. My own recommendation for news fast has to do with the psychology and self-motivation. If you go for periods of time without listening to or reading the news, you will notice an upswing in your optimism about life. You will feel a lift in energy. But shouldn't I stay informed? People ask me. Aren't I being a bad citizen if I don't keep up with what's happening in my community? Shouldn't I be watching the news? In answer to this question, I offer an observation that may startle you. The news is no longer the news. It used to be what Walter Cronkite would end his program by saying, and that's the way it is. And we trusted that he was right. But today it's much different. Shock value has the highest premium of all for a news story, and the lines are now blurred between the evening news and the grossest tabloids. Tom Brokaw is as likely to lead his show with a story about a woman cutting off her husband's private parts as is the National Enquirer. Today, the goal of the person putting the evening news show together is to stimulate our emotions in as many ways as possible. Every night we will see human suffering. We'll also see con artists and even whole companies getting away with scams that victimized people cruelly. If there is a report on politics, it features the most venomous attacks between two partisans. The goal of the news today is stimulation. It's to take us on an emotional roller coaster ride. It's a good program if we have been enraged by one story, saddened by another, and amused by at the third. It is any wonder that by programming our minds with this gross and frightening information all day and into the night, we end up a little less motivated. It is hard to understand a certain slippage in our optimism. Going on news fast is a refreshing cure for this problem. You can do it for one day a week to begin with and then get back into the tabloid shows the next day if you have to. Once you start fasting, you will find your entire mood picking up. But what about staying informed, you ask? There are many ways to stay fully informed. The internet has wonderful, thoughtful sites. In fact, it is far better to be informed intellectually than to be informed emotionally. There are weekly and monthly magazines as well as e-zines that do a fine job of informing us and giving us a calm, thoughtful, overall perspective of the news. Don't worry about missing out on important news, really big news, like a war, a natural disaster, or an assassination will get to you just as quickly during a news fast as it would if you were watching the news. Begin to experiment with news fast today. Go on a short one at first and then extend the periods of time as your system allows. When you do return to the news, be totally conscious of just what the show is trying to do to you. Don't passively take it in as if what you are saying is really the way it is. It's not. They are not going to tell you how many thousands of planes landed safely today. Replace worry with action. Don't worry, or rather don't just worry. Let worry change into action. When you find yourself worrying about something, ask yourself the action question. What can I do about this right now? and then do something, anything, any small thing. Most of life, I spent my time asking myself the wrong question. Every time I worried, I asked myself, what should I be feeling about this? I finally discovered that I was much happier when I started asking instead, what can I do about this? If I'm worried about the conversation I had with my wife last night and how unfair I might have been to say the things I shared, I can ask myself, what can I do about that right now? By putting the question into the action arena, a lot of possibilities will occur to me. First, I could send her flowers. Or two, I could call her to tell her I was concerned about how I left things. Or three, I could leave a nice little note somewhere for her. Four, I could go see her to make things right. All of these possibilities are actions, and when I act on something, the worry goes away. We often hear the phrase, worry it to death, but that phrase doesn't reflect what really happens when we worry. It would be great if we could worry something to death. When it dies, we could dispose of the body and be done with it. But when we worry, we don't worry a thing to death, we worry it to life. Our worrying makes the problem grow, and most of the time, we worry it into a grotesque kind of life, a kind of Frankenstein's monster that frightens us beyond all reason. I once came up with a system for action that helped turn my worrying habits completely around. I would list the 5 things that I was worried about. Perhaps they were 4 projects at work, and the 5th was my son's trouble he was having with a certain teacher. I would then decide to spend 5 minutes on each problem doing something, anything. By deciding this, I knew I was committing myself to 25 minutes of activity, no more, so it didn't feel at all overwhelming. Then I could make a game of it. On Project 1, a seminar workbook deadline for a new course, I would spend 5 minutes writing it. Maybe I only got the first 2 pages done, but it felt great. It felt like I would finally started it. Then on item number 2, a meeting I knew I had to have with a client over a sticky contract issue. I would call his office and schedule the meeting and put it in my calendar. That too felt good. My third worry, a stack of correspondence I needed to answer. I would take 5 minutes sorting and stacking and putting them into a folder that was separate from the other clutter on my desk. That felt satisfying too. The 4th item was a travel arrangement that had to be worked out. I would take no more than 5 minutes looking at my calendar and leaving a voicemail for my travel agent to fax me some alternatives on the trip. Finally, on the matter of my son, I would pull out a piece of paper and write a short letter to his teacher, expressing my concern for him, my support of her efforts, and my desire to arrange a meeting quickly so all 3 of us could sit down together and make some agreements. All of that took 25 minutes. And the 5 things that were worrying me the most were no longer worrying me. I could then go back anytime later and work them to completion. If something is worrying you, always do something about it. It doesn't have to be the big thing that will make it disappear. It can be any small thing, but the positive effect it will have on you will be enormous. A friend of mine was worried about her cat, which had some mild symptoms of illness, but nothing that looked severe enough to take the cat to the veterinarian. She also thought the symptoms were so subtle that they might not be easy to describe to the vet. But still she worried. She brought the subject up 2 or 3 more times before I finally said to her, "You must do something. That's just the problem. There's nothing to do," she said. "Take some kind of action," I said. "Call the vet and talk to him." That doesn't make sense because the vet wouldn't know anything from what I told him, and he would probably ask me to take her in to see him. And I know it's not that serious, he said. "Yes, I understand," I said, "but you should take the action for you, not for the cat or the vet. By not doing anything, you are keeping yourself trapped into worrying." Okay, she said, I see what you mean. When she called the vet, to her surprise, the vet was able to make a good assessment of what was wrong. He recommended that she bring the cat in, and if it was what he thought it was, he could give her something to clear it up right away. Anything that worries you should be acted on, not just thought about. Don't be scared about the action. You can make it very small and easy. As long as you take an action, even small actions will chase away your fears. Fears has a hard time coexisting with action. When there is action, there is no fear. When there is a fear, there is no action. The next time you are worried about something, ask yourself, what small thing can I do right now? Then do it. Remember not to ask, what could I possibly do to make this whole thing go away? That question does not get you into action at all. Acting on your worries frees you up for other things. It removes fear and uncertainty from your life and puts you back in control of creating what you want. Just do it. Run with the thinkers. The president of a major office equipment company put his problem to me this way. How do I get the whiners in my company to stop whining and start coming up with solutions? He went on to explain that he had two kinds of people working for him, the whiners and the thinkers. The whiners were often very smart and dedicated employees who worked long, hard hours. But when they came into the manager's office, it was almost always to complain. They are great at finding fault with other managers and telling me what's wrong with our systems. The president said, but they are a drain on me because they are so negative that I end up trying to make them feel better. After that, I'm depressed. The thinkers, on the other hand, had a different way of coming into the office with problems. The thinkers come to me with ideas, he said. They see the same problems that the whiners see, but they have already thought about possible solutions. The thinkers, in other words, have assumed ownership of the company and are creating the future of the company with their thinking. The whiners have stopped thinking. Once the problems are identified and their reaction to them justified, the thinking stops. The thinkers have taken their reaction to the company's problems past their emotions and into their minds. And because they have formulated some solutions, the nature of their meeting with the manager is creative. It's a brainstorming meeting. The manager enjoys these meetings because they stimulate his mind too. Both parties leave the meeting feeling energized intellectually, and the manager looks forward to future meetings with the thinkers. The whiners have left their reaction to their company's problem down at the emotional level. They express resentment, fear, and worry. The manager's problem in such a meeting is that he deals primarily with those emotions, so he finishes the meeting with his own sense of discouragement. When you are committed to self-motivation as a way of life, you will fall into the realm of the thinker. Your thinking not only creates your motivation, but it creates your relationships, your family, and the organization you work for as well, because they are all a part of you. You are more valuable to your organization with this orientation of thinking, and you are more valuable to yourself. Put more enjoyment in. There is a huge difference between pleasure and enjoyment. And when we are absolutely clear about the difference, we can grow much faster toward a focused and energized life. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi best describes this difference in his various books on flow, the psychological state that we get in when time disappears and we are thoroughly engaged in what we are doing. Csikszentmihalyi distinguishes what we do for pleasure: routine sex, eating, drinking, etc. From what we do for enjoyment. Enjoyment is deeper. Enjoyment always involves the use of a skill and the facing of a challenge. So, sailing, gardening, painting, bowling, golfing, cooking, and any such activity involving skills meeting a challenge constitute enjoyment. People who get clear on that difference begin to put more enjoyment into their lives. They reach the happy and fulfilled psychological state known as flow. Increasing their skills and seeking challenges to engage those skills are what lead to an enjoyable life. There are many stories and accounts about the winners of lotteries who are jubilant when they win, but whose lives descend into a nightmare after acquiring that unearned money. No challenge, no skill. The lottery looks like the answer to people because they associate money with pleasure, but the true enjoyment of money comes in part from the earning of it, which involves skill and challenge. Watching television is usually done for pleasure. That's why so few people can remember or make use of any of the 30 hours of television they have watched in the past week. In watching television, there is no combination of skill and challenge. Contrast that dull pleasure hangover we get from watching television with what happens when we spend the same amount of time preparing for a big Thanksgiving dinner for friends and relatives. In looking back, we remember quite vividly the entire Thanksgiving endeavor. One of the most inspirational people I know of is Martha Stewart. She personifies mastery of the concept of enjoyment. Her magazines and videotapes celebrate cooking, gardening, and home entertainment skills. Her own contagious enthusiasm for the things she enjoys and teaches others makes her, in my opinion, one of today's true heroes of optimism. If you are feeling like you have forgotten how to enjoy your own home, yard, and kitchen, buy one of her videotapes and allow her to inspire you. You can increase your own self-motivation by learning to be more aware of the profound difference between enjoyment and mere pleasure. Keep walking. Ever since I was a child, I had a recurring dream that I began each day facing a mattress. The more I pushed into this mattress before my day began, the more the indentation went in and the more shaped up the sprung energy of the mattress got. The more the mattress was indented with my pushing at the start of the day, the higher it would spring up when I lay down on it to sleep at night. I would lie down on this mattress at night and see how high my dreams would fly me. How high I flew would always depend on the indentations I gave the mattress during the day, the impressions I gave it, how impressive I was, the difference I made. So then after thinking about that dream the other day, I decided to step up my walking. I decided that the recurring dream was the way my subconscious chose to tell me something vital, something about the difference walking made, something about oxygen being pushed into my system. Walking would be an action I could take while wide awake. Walking would drive more oxygen into my lungs. I would become more like that great football coach, Amos Alonso Stack, who lived to be 103 years old. Amos Alonso Stack was asked how he lived to be so old. The average life expectancy during his lifetime was 65, and he said, I have for the greater part of my life indulged in running and other vigorous exercise that forced large amounts of oxygen into my body. I increased my walking just to see what would happen if my lungs became my mattress. I began to get happier. I began to enjoy life more. I began to be more motivated. As I walked, I wondered, what if the spirit lives as an aura around us? What if the spirit were a cloud of energy that exists around and outside our bodies, ready at all times to be breathed in, drown right into the soul? What if when you breathe deeply, you pulled in your own spirit and you received energy for action, energy for an explosive takedown of one of your out of control problems? What if the solution to problems outside you was inside you? Deepak Chopra quotes an ancient anonymous Indian says as identifying humanity's near fatal superstition. You believe that you live in the universe when in reality the universe lives in you. Many modern scientific books are now referring to the human brain as the 3-pound universe. When the body moves, so does the mind. So does that inner world. When you are walking, you're organizing your mind, whatever you want to be or not. Soon, we realize that the mind and the body are connected. When the Greeks said the secret to a happy life was a sound mind in a sound body, they were on to a powerful truth. I try to talk myself out of that truth many times a week. I am too tired to exercise. I have an injury. I haven't had enough sleep. I shouldn't listen to my body. I would be shortchanging my children of the important time they need with me if I selfishly went out for my long walk, but I am always better off if I choose the walk. I am even better at relating to my children because walking takes me to the soul. That's why I can't leave it out. I can't pretend it has nothing to do with this subject because it's how I pull the truth to me. I pull the globe around toward me under my feet by walking. As the world turns, the lies leak out of my mind into space. As the body becomes sound, so does the mind. It's true. And the songs in my head keep the rhythm of the walk going. Fats Domino, Ricky Nelson. 10 years after I'm walking, yes, indeed, I am going home. There's something about walking that combines opposites, activity and relaxation. This very paradox is what creates whole brain thinking. Opposites, out in the world and solitude, alone, but out there walking. This combining of opposites activity activates the harmony I need between the right and left brain, between the adult and the child, between the higher self and the animal. Great solutions appear. Truth becomes beauty. You have your own walking available to you too. Yes, indeed. It might be dancing or swimming or running or racquetball or boxing or aerobics. But it's all the same thing. It's all a way of moving the body around like a merry plaything and oxygenating the spirit in the process.